question to follow up, if I could. Do you consider the current policy rate still, are you confident that it's sufficiently restrictive to get inflation back to 2%?
So I do think the evidence shows, pretty clearly that policy is restrictive and is weighing on demand. And there are a few places I would point to for that. You can start with the labor market. So demand is still strong, the demand side of the labor market in particular, but it's cooled from its extremely high level of a couple of years ago. And you see that in job openings. You saw it, more evidence of that today in the JOLTS report, as you'll know. It's still higher than pre-pandemic, but it has been coming down both in the Indeed report and in the JOLTS report. That's demand cooling. The same is true of quits and hiring rates, which have essentially normalized. I also we look at surveys of workers and, surveys of workers and businesses and ask workers, are jobs plentiful? And ask businesses, are workers plentiful? Is it easy to find workers? And you've seen that the answers to those have come back down to pre-pandemic levels. You also see in interest-sensitive spending like housing and investment, you also see that higher interest rates are weighing on those activities. So I do think it's clear that that policy is restrictive.
Sufficiently restrictive, I guess.
So I would say that we believe it is restrictive, and we believe over time it will be sufficiently restrictive. That will be a question that, that the data will have to answer.
So as a follow-up, if inflation
Pardon me.
continues running roughly sideways as it has been, the job market stays reasonably strong, unemployment low, and expectations are anchored and maintained, would you disrupt that for
Expectations are not anchored?
Or anchored.
Or anchored.
Stable, roughly. Would you disrupt that for the last half point on PCE?
I don't want to get into complicated hypotheticals, but I would say that, we're committed to retaining our current restrictive stance of policy for as long as is appropriate, and we'll do that.